Who is Gen Z? What do they think about? How does the church reach them? How do they compare to other generations? That's one of the things we'll be talking about on this episode of the Church Answers podcast. I'm Thom Rainer. I'm joined by Jess Rainer, and I'm always grateful to Cheney and Associates for being not just a sponsor, but the ministry partner with us. We are so well aligned. That's why anytime someone says, "Hey, I need to get someone to do my accounting and bookkeeping," I say, "Yeah, you shouldn't keep it internal. You need to find it someone that can do it really well." But guess what? You don't need to find it. Just go to CheneyAssociates.com or look at the show notes, and the link is there. We love our relationship with Cheney and Associates. You will not regret using them as your accounting and bookkeeping firm because they are the accounting firm for the church. They're serving over 1,100 churches. Unbelievable service, unbelievable product. You won't regret it. Jess, you and I, seems like forever ago, wrote a book called The Millennials. I actually did pretty well, had a good response to it.
Oh, yeah.
How long ago was that? Long time. You're still a seminary student, if I recall.
Yeah, I think the research was done in 2009, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is a long time ago because that would have been my first grandchild's birth.
Yeah. And I think the book released 2010, 2011. I don't know. It was in that time frame.
Well, we want to talk about the generations, and depending upon the topic, one of us usually ends up doing more talking than the other. There's a good possibility I'm going to do more talking on this one. You've done your research on the millennials, but I'm going to be talking about all generations. And I've been doing a lot of generational study lately because I'm writing a book called The Anxious Generation Goes to Church. And in that particular book, I'm taking the title, of course, from another book called The Anxious Generation. I'm talking about what the church can do to make a difference with this generation, to help this generation and their parents. And so I've been going back, Jess, and doing a load of work on the generations. Now, if you're looking in the show notes, and I'm going to tell Alana this because I know that she's listening. If you're looking in the show notes, it says the millennials are 1980 to 2000. Now, that's just for me and you and Alana. Alana's the producer. You can't see her, but Alana's behind the scene. And it says the dates for the millennials are 1980 to 2000 birth dates. Now, just you remember those dates because those are the dates we used.
Mm-hmm.
Okay?
Yep.
I'm changing it.
Okay.
I'm going 1997 for the end of the millennials, so 1980 to 1997. And I'm going to go 1997 to 2015 for Gen Z.
Which falls in line with the more widely accepted date range. Most don't believe the millennials ended in 2000.
Well, at the time, we did not have the information we have today. And when I look at a generation and I do a generational study, I get a little irritated at those people who say, well, no, because of these incidents and events that occurred, we're not going to do these kind of dates. And they mix and match. This one had events. This one was purely live births, which is how the generational studies began. And they mix and match. I am a purist on this. And here's my rules. We're going to look at live birth patterns, and we're not going to go more than 20 years. Those are my two rules. Live birth patterns and don't go more than 20 years. Well, the live birth patterns for the millennials really took a turn sharply downward at 1997.
Okay.
And so we're going to end it there, and we're going to pick up with Gen Z. Now, I want to say this about the live birth. And I was looking at my data here. I don't have it in front of me. But live births, we just need to be looking at this more. If you look at the generation that preceded the baby boom, which would be the greatest generation, or any intergenerational name that you have that is before 1946, what you would see is about a live birth rate of around 20 per 1,000 population. Okay. Then you get to the baby boom and it doubles. That's what is significant about that. The live birth rate doubles. From the baby boom to Gen X to millennials to Gen Z, it is a demographic cliff. And the live birth rate of Gen Z is 11. It is the lowest in history. The previous
Wow.
lowest was millennials. The previous lowest was Gen X.
Hmm.
It is a demographic cliff. And if schools and churches and anybody's not looking at this, you're going to miss one of the biggest things that's happening in America today. Fewer children are being born, and whereas the baby boomers were like a pig and a python passing through, and there's this big bulge as they went through. That's not original with me, by the way. Uh, that's how one demographer described the baby boom. Hey, we got this timeline, and here comes the baby boom, and it's like this pig going through the python. Uh,
That's an odd analogy, but okay.
if it were mine, I would claim it as well. But we have this demographic cliff where fewer and fewer children are being born per 1,000, and I don't think anybody's talking about it except maybe some of the purists in these areas.
Hmm.
And we're going on as if life is going to be the same. Our schools are not going to be the same. We're already experiencing it in our colleges. You're going to see more and more of this. The baby boomers made a significant difference demographically. I don't know otherwise because they were so big, 76 million of them. But even more than 76 billion was a birth rate of around 40 per 1,000. And now it's closer to 10 or 11.
Hmm.
And it's just fallen off completely. I don't know what you think, and I'm just going to throw you a curveball, and you may not be able to hit it or not. But parents are, or just people are deciding to have less children, fewer children today, and it's been a trend since 1964. Any thoughts on that? And if you don't have
Well,
any thoughts, I'll move
first
on.
first thought is I did my part. So I have I
Four.
have three, yeah, four. One's with the Lord, but three Gen Z kids.
Mm-hmm.
And so, just before I answer the question, maybe just a quick clarification for me. You talk about live births per thousand. Is that the stat
Mm-hmm.
you used? What about the raw numbers? Because I know the millennials didn't they have a significant amount of live births still, even more than
Mm-hmm.
previous generations or Gen Z. So you're talking about the number of people who are choosing to have kids is on a sharp decline. Is that correct?
That is correct. The reason the millennials, when you and I did it, they had surpassed when we wrote the book, they had surpassed the boomers because we took them out to 2000.
Okay,
And so there were 78 million of them. They're not the biggest. Boomers are back to being the biggest according to the live birth rate. But think of it this way:
that's fitting for the
if
boomers.
you if if you had 76 million boomers having millennials, you could have the birth rate go down and still have a lot of kids.
Right.
And that's what's happened. Is how many in the preceding generation had kids,
Hmm.
and that determines the live birth rate.
Yeah.
So really, it's my parents and that generation that needs to say, "Hey, we produced the largest generation in history."
Right. Right. Yeah, and I think so when you think of it in that way, in terms of it, to what it sounds like you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, people are just being intentional about not having kids, or at least not having the number of kids than they did before. I mean, yeah, the big question is why. Why is that the case if the nuclear family size is shrinking? I think I'm just going to do more observational data of the millennials. Seeing that the millennials have less, I think there's some key factors with the millennial generation. I feel like adulthood has been pushed back farther and farther.
Absolutely.
I feel like it was, I feel like I have millennial peers who are still having kids though. So in a way, I guess it would be there where I had Gen Z. I have friends who are having, what do we call them, Gen Alpha? Is that right?
Gen Alpha is
Yeah,
next.
they're having Gen Alpha kids, and so I think maybe part of it, it's just gotten stretched out with age because the emphasis was married early, kids early. Now the average age of getting married is pushed back far far more, and then a lot of people are waiting to have kids, and so I think too it goes back to marriage and the importance of marriage and the importance of family. And I think millennials are responding to the divorce rates that they saw. So I think all this I don't think there's one set answer. I think there's each generation has their reasons why. I think though what started in the millennials, especially in terms of technology and social media, it's carrying into Gen Z, to where we're going to see even less live births, I think, than any other generation prior because of the delayed adulthood and what's happening. My quick thoughts.
That's a good segue. I'm going to actually end it here because we're going to pick up on the anxious generation in the next episode. And we're going to be able to talk about Gen Z in the context of the anxious generation and what's going on there. That might be a better comparison. Maybe this one's just our introduction, and we'll get some more good information in the next one. Hey, stay tuned. This is episode number 217. We've already downloaded for you episode 218. If you haven't heard the phrase the anxious generation, you need to hear about it, and you need to hear a lot about what is going on. And we'll be talking about that very soon. Listen to all 3 of our episodes, and we'll be ready to go. We'll talk to you later. Thank you for being here.